Well, hello there, and welcome to my video on crimping pins for circular connectors. We're going to start off with a front release connector, and this is a large gauge. This is a 16 gauge pin. So we're going to use a piece of 14 or 16 gauge wire, and we're going to use these strippers. First thing I want to say is if you're serious about doing this kind of work, buy a good quality stripper such as these. I bought these off the Snap-on truck. These are Blue Point. They cost about $65 or $70. I'm sure with your student discount you'd get them cheaper. Definitely take advantage of that while you can. Again, you've done this stripping before. We put our wire in, strip it. Why do we like these strippers? Let's take a look at that wire if we can get it to zoom in. A little glare, but just trust me, there's no nicks, no problems. So how do I know that that wire is in far enough? Let's zoom in and take a look. Notice in the inspection hole, I have a little wire showing, and even if I have a slight amount of gap between the insulation and the wire, so we know this is correct. Now that we have our wire stripped and our pin correct, let's take a look at our crimpers. This is the crimper called out in the manual, the M22520/101, otherwise known as a Big Daniels. And it's got this removable turret head. These heads come off, a little Allen wrench down in here to remove the heads off. And we can see again, this is the part number that was called out, M22520/102. Frame called the Big Daniels, or an AFM H8, and this turret head, there's different turret heads to do different kinds of contacts. So you can see I've got three places to put the pin. I can put it in the red spot, the blue spot, or the gold spot. And this rotates around. Whichever one is lined up with the white line is the one we'll use, and that's where the crimping takes place. How do I know which one to do? So as I look here, on the turret head is a label which will tell me which of the positions to use, red, gold, or blue. It gives me pin sizes, contact sizes, whether they're pins or sockets, doesn't matter. 20 gauge contact, 16 gauge, 12 gauge. The 16 gauge, it says, need to use blue. We'll line that up with blue. If it wasn't lined up, like I said, you can click, rotate this around to either direction, so we have it lined up with blue. Next, we have to select this selector. There is a selector wheel here which will select the depth in of the crimp. So we take a look here on this label. It says wire size, and we're going to use 16 gauge wire. So we need a selector on 6. So again, I've got the selector number with the arrow, and this one happens to be on 6. That's 4, 18, or 6, which also gives you the wire gauge 16. So now that we have all of this, we've got our tool set correctly. We push our top down, grab our wire and our contact, slide the wire on, put it in this hole until it bottoms out, and then just simply squeeze it until the ratchet stops, pull it out. First thing I always do is a tug test. Okay, it's crimped well. Let's take a look at what we've got. You can see the crimps are right there within the color band. If we had crimped this on red or on gold, that would have changed where on here the crimp was done, further down or further up in the color band. If we had changed the depth number that would change how deep the crimp goes in, either too deep where we're damaging and breaking, or too loose where the wire pulls out. All right, we have done front release contacts. Let's look at a rear release contact. Here I've got a small rear release contact, my wire, and my crimper. Again, it's a ratcheting type. Squeeze it all the way till it stops. And this is the AFM8, also known as the 22520/2-01, also mostly called the Little Blue Daniels. I take my wire, 20 gauge, put it in the appropriate hole, strip it. Once again, I check it for the depth, that it's correct. It is, and I can see the wire. Zoom in and take a look, and again we've got some wire in the inspection hole with a little gap for our insulation. This crimper is a little simpler in that we only have to set the tightness of the crimp, the size of the crimp, not the depth. This positioner tool, will set the depth automatically. You can see it here pretty simply. The contact fits there, and you can see that it's right in that middle color band, where the crimp will happen. So we put the positioner. Here's our positioner. It's a little worn out, but you can see that for 24 gauge wire it's 4, for 22 it's 5. There's a hole here, but for 20 it's 6. Let's look at what the crimp adjustment does for us. Here I've put it on 8. And as I crimp, you can see how far the jaws go in, the little crimping jaws. Now let's put it on 1. You can see they're quite a bit tighter. So essentially, just like with wire, the bigger the number, the larger the number, the smaller the diameter of the crimp. There's the little keys. We've got our tool back together with the positioner, and we're set on 6. And again, crimping this is fairly simple and straightforward, much like we did with the front release style contact. We put it in, squeeze it all the way, release. I do my tug test, and as we look, we can see the crimp is right there where it's supposed to be, and there's wire showing through. So that's it. That's all there is to crimping the contacts, pins, and sockets for front and rear release connectors. Thanks for tuning in.